To the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious with Mr. Scott Pooke here. Scott, greetings.
Greetings, Mark.
And
Great to be
he
here.
is from Hobart, Tasmania, Australia. And we're so glad that you're with us today. Scott is one of our number one Stay Curious fans out there. We could arm wrestle between a couple of you out there like Robert Law and Dave Stange, but a familiar name to you all, chiming in occasionally on our Facebook posts as well as watching our Stay Curious program. Scott, welcome to America. How are you?
I'm really good, Mark. It's great to be here, and particularly be here at the inn.
Where? Is it back? Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I was messing with the microphone, making sure we could hear you well. Yeah, tell us about why you're here and your excitement to be on Stay Curious.
Well, I've been watching Stay Curious in Australia since 2020. It comes in at about anywhere from 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's great breakfast viewing for me. And I'm in America really to increase my knowledge of space activities and visit a lot of the space museums, which we'll talk about in a bit, and really learn as much as I can about this great program that we have.
Good. You're a space historian, and you have aspirations of writing a book, and you've been on a lot of radio in Australia.
Yeah, I do a lot of radio work for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in Australia and some of the commercial networks as well. One of these days I may get myself organised to write a book. At the moment, the media and doing outreach in non-COVID times, hoping to get back to that again soon, keeps me very busy with my space interests.
And what's your professional job, Scott?
As a profession, I work in a public library. I run a specialised service for aged and infirm in the inner west of Sydney at the moment.
Okay. And there he's talking Australia. We've got this gorgeous green screen of Australia at night behind us here. Yes, you're going to learn a little bit geography because I don't know. I kind of know where Sydney is, but we've got a great friend that I'm sure is watching. Cliff Watson lives in Pomona. Pomona, you told me, is like right here on the, well, we'll see that on our pictures there. But of course, what strikes us as this night interpretation of Australia are the bright lights in the western part of it. What's that all about?
Okay, a lot of those, you're looking at the outback area of Australia, they could be small settlements or even fires down on the Earth. A lot of the Apollo astronauts, as they orbited the Earth, talked about seeing fires down on the Earth, particularly in Australia. So a lot of those fires do show up incredibly well in satellite imagery.
In your history of space research, Australia plays a big figure in several things I'll have you tell us about. Also, the Great Barrier Reef is one of the most beautiful sights, everybody says, off New Zealand up to the upper right up there.
Yeah, the state of Queensland, the Great Barrier Reef pretty well stretches from north to south. I've been privileged to visit it a few times. I have family, maternal family in that area, and the reef back in the times when I was visiting was absolutely beautiful. But now it is starting to die off a bit.
I'm going to push this just a little bit closer and make sure we're maintaining our connection there. We're good? Okay, good. So people really living there in the outdoors, as families, right? Aborigines and
Yeah,
other,
very much so. Very much so. Particularly through that interior area, there's a lot of people living there in small communities, some living basically off the land. So and they're the areas you can see lit up in that section of the Australian continent that's between Mark and myself.
several Australian astronauts. I'm trying to think from there. You know a couple.
Yeah, starting with Phil Chapman back in the Apollo program, selected as one of the scientist astronauts, never flew, but he
Phil Chapman.
yeah, from the University of Melbourne, if I remember correctly. And then we come to an oceanographer, Paul Scully-Power, flew on Flight 41G in October 1984. And then you need to go even further ahead to STS-77, and you have Andrew Thomas starting to fly. He was one of the long-term residents on Mir, and his final flight, I believe, was a flight to the International Space Station on one of the early development missions.
That's right. Well, Scott, you passed the test there. You do have some good space chops, my friend there.
Thank you.
I knew you would, and told him we're going to talk about some fun stuff today. Enjoy a little bit about the continent of Australia there. And this is your, you've been to America several times before. Actually, this is your 30th anniversary of coming. Do you call it the States or U.S. or America? What are we known as over there? Home?
I call it home.
You do?
In Australia, it's referred to predominantly as the States, but for me, I'm as much as home in America as I am in Australia, particularly here on the Space Coast.
What brought you to your first time, and where'd you fly in? Or
I flew into San Francisco the first time, and I was scared because I walked out of the terminal and everything was reversed. The cars were on the wrong side of the road. There was too much noise.
too much noise.
It took me a full day to work the courage to actually go into downtown San Francisco for the first time. But now I fly in.
It still takes a lot of courage to do that, by the way.
But now I fly in and I just get straight down to the business that I'm here, which is looking for and recovering, historical material to do with the space program. And I go now usually for 3 months at a time. I'm in the home stretch for this trip, less than a month to go. So mixed emotions, looking forward to getting home, but I miss the space community over here.
Well, we're glad that you stay in touch with us, Scott Pooke, by watching Stay Curious and, keeping in touch with all the usual websites and so forth here. It's that's what's the beautiful thing about our 21st century is you don't seem so far away now to me that I've met you. And then when you chime in from Hobart, Tasmania, it's like, wow, I got a friend chiming in. Like, you could
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And during the period of lockdown, Stay Curious was just so vital to me to keep in contact with what was going on space-wise in the United States, and still is. You guys are doing a fantastic service to the space community.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And part of the we is Marty Winkle, my co-producer for Marty. We're working on 240 episodes. How many of those you think you've seen?
I reckon I've seen about 130 of them.
Oh, good for you. Marty, hello. How are you, buddy? It's good to see one of our #1 fans here on Stay Curious. He's got an interesting program for us.
Yeah, I'm doing good, Mark. I think you said 240.
Yeah.
About 440.
That he's watched?
No, that we've done.
Oh, we've done 740.
Okay, you just said 240. I think.
That he's watched.
Oh,
I asked him how many he watched.
oh,
there.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, he said, and that's good. I know Stangy's going to say he's missed only a couple of them: the birth of his grandkids and an appendectomy, maybe. Joking with you there, Dave Stangy up there, but in Michigan. But yeah, we're proud as a team that we have been able to reach some of the space community and some of the people who help move the space community, like the Usiak brothers. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And Chris Calley, a space artist. All right. And, that's what's important to us is furthering those things. Doug Forrest, another space artist that found us and are sharing our content. And that's big for us on YouTube to monetize it. So.
Well, the great thing is now that Stay Curious has moved to so many different formats, I can pick up the broadcast at any time of the day in Australia. It doesn't have to be when it actually goes out.
Yes, right. We want people to go to YouTube and watch our library of it there. Well, you know that we celebrate astronaut birthdays, okay? I was, what happened to my hat? I'm really discombobulated today, but we do have an astronaut birthday. Put that up there. Bill Reedy. All right. And this is an astronaut really under the radar. They don't even list much about him in Wikipedia. William Francis Reedy was born on January 24th, 1952 in Quonset Point, Rhode Island. He went to high school in McLean, Virginia, so he probably considers that more of his hometown. He has 3 space flights, 28 days in space, STS 42, 51, and 79. and he was a mission specialist and joined as a researcher. He's a 1987 group. All right, and so here's a picture of him. That was when he was young. He loved Star Trek, obviously. Okay, and there he's dressed up and posted this on Facebook. Couldn't find out too much about it, but Bill Reedy, there you are, and a few months ago, probably a few years ago. There's the moon's upside down, Scott Pooke,
Yeah.
by the way. It should be
Should be the,
left to right, yeah.
Yeah.
But we noticed that stuff. Anyway, looking good there. And born in 1952, that makes him 71 years old. And Scott, like you know, we celebrate the birthdays of astronauts, particularly our shuttle astronauts, because they're doing things with STEAM and educating kids. And just like today, Marty went out and saw Jose Hernandez at the Space Center. He was the astronaut of the day. How is Mr. Jose Hernandez, Marty?
Oh, he's doing good. He's an excellent speaker. Does a great show.
And he's got a winery too, where he grows up. I remember seeing him, and did he tell the story where he was dreaming to go to space? His dad took him in the kitchen where you got paddled, or you ate, or something serious happened. His dad, said, if you're going to be an astronaut, you need to work hard and all that. Did he tell that story? Because he started from a migrant parents.
Yeah, he
And,
definitely did.
A quite success story there. Very, very much inspired by his father backing him all the way. So Jose Hernandez, wonderful astronaut of our shuttle era. Well, you've traveled to a lot of space centers. About how many have you been to?
Mark,
What ones that stick out in your head?
I really lost count now, but there are a couple that stick out. Number one, apart from the museum we're currently coming from, it would have to be the Kansas Cosmosphere.
Oh, and you're going there, are you?
In about a week's time. This will be my second visit. And just the range of hardware that they've got there,
Oh, Kansas, yes.
it just blows your mind. Russian and American hardware. And really some quite mundane items which have a unique history, such as the slide rules for Werner von Braun and Sergei Korolev.
Oh, really? Both of them.
Both of
Korolev, the pioneer of the Russian program.
Yeah, and both of these slide rules side by side, and it was said that they wanted to meet in person, but were never actually able to. But at least the two slide rules are there, and there is the foundation of where the program really
That
begins.
is interesting. Yeah, Sergei Korolev, the father of their space program, like von Braun ours.
Yeah.
In there. And have you been to the Tom Stafford Museum in Weatherford, Oklahoma?
That is hopefully coming up on this trip. They have the Gemini 6 spacecraft now out there. So I'm eager to see
and
Gemini
a Titan
6.
II
A Titan
spacecraft laying down. And then if you go there, also go to the Oklahoma City Museum. Has a V2. They've got all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, they've just moved Skylab 4 command module there.
Oh, okay.
After refurbishing it. It was up at Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. with the remodeling of that. They've moved Skylab 4 down to Oklahoma. So really looking forward to seeing that in its new location.
Have you been to this museum before? And do our Stay Curious fans recognize this?
Yeah, this I went to on my last visit. This is the Armstrong Museum in Wapakoneta, Ohio.
That's right.
And
Wapakoneta, Ohio, for a Buckeye that grew up 80 miles north of there.
wow, good to meet a Buckeye.
And I'll tell you something. What's real cool about this museum is across the street. All right, is the best Waffle House in America. It is a delicious Waffle House there.
Well, you know what? Now you give me an excuse to go back because I love my waffles.
Okay, good. Well, have you caught up with what's happening up there at the Armstrong Museum, Marty? Did you see this in the news? There's a beautiful night shot of it as you see it from Interstate 75. You haven't seen the Armstrong Museum in the news, Marty?
No, I haven't.
Well, they got one of the biggest moon rocks you'll ever see, and this is me, a couple decades ago probably, looking at that big moon rock in the, and they've replaced this moon rock with a new exhibit, Scott and
I wonder
Marty.
what that exhibit.
They seem to think that a chicken egg is now on par with
With a moon rock.
rock at the prices of them that you have at the grocery store.
Well, we have the
So,
same problem down in Australia. They're becoming more and more expensive. So, what would you rather, an egg or a moon rock?
there you go. There you go. So good to you, Armstrong Museum, for that fun that they posted on their Facebook page today. Well, let's get a little history lesson there. Marty, you may have to use your arrow there a little bit as we take on some geography there. There, of course, is the Australian continent. Approximately how many people live there? America's over 300 million now.
Well, I could give you the figures for Sydney, where I'm currently based. It's a little over 6 million in Sydney.
Okay, and
the two,
Sydney's right off my shoulder there.
yeah, and further to the south, you can see Melbourne, and Melbourne it's about to overtake Sydney as the largest population centre. Yeah, you got it in Australia. They expect that to happen within the next 3 to 5 years.
Is that right? Wow.
Most-
But you grew up in Hobart, Tasmania, the island below
Yeah.
Australia.
I grew up on the island state of Tasmania, first in Launceston, which is in the north, and now my mother and my brother are relocated to Hobart. So I sort of look at myself as a Tasmanian space researcher and historian. But
How far away is that from Antarctica?
you can, apparently it's a couple of days sail, and about 5 days sail, but Hobart is the last stop before the South Pole. We have a lot of Antarctic research vessels go out of Hobart to resupply the Australian bases down there, and some internationals as well.
In case you didn't know, Australia's divided up into states like the United States. 2, 4, 6, you got 7 states there. Queensland is where our good friend Cliff Watson's from, about right where the border is with New South Wales, right?
Yeah, just a little bit further north, Mark. And g'day to Cliff if you're watching. It's good to make the connection.
Is
Cliff's
Cliff on there, Marty?
I'm sorry?
Has Cliff Watson said hi?
Oh, yeah.
Mate, all right, buddy, good.
so Cliff's in an area of Queensland just to the north of Brisbane, to the north of an area called the Sunshine Coast, which is
There's
one of
Brisbane.
our warmer areas.
And those of you freezing to death up in Michigan, Ohio, the New England, out in Minnesota, Wisconsin, what's the weather like when you left a week ago or so?
I've been over here since November, and the weather at the moment in Sydney, they're having days pushing 90 degrees.
So it's summertime.
It's
Big
summertime.
time summertime. So a lot of people do vacations in January,
Yeah,
February.
particularly January. School's out for a lot of the country at the moment. They'll just start going back this week. So
Okay.
that's the end of our school year right before Christmas, and then we pick up again in January. So there's a lot of people flocking to the beaches, particularly on the Sunshine Coast where Cliff is, and a lot of people coming up from Australia to head to North Queensland for a summer break before they get into the real year.
Interesting. Well, we wanted to give a little close-up of Tasmania there, all right? Tasman Sea looks like a beautiful country, and those of you that have done cruises have seen sites like this.
Yeah, this is the Frasernaid Peninsula and Wineglass Bay on the east coast of Tasmania. This is one of our more wild areas. There's no actual road access in there. You have to walk in. It takes about a 3-hour walk to get in there, but it's pristine beaches and water, and one of our more beautiful areas of Tasmania.
That looks gorgeous, doesn't it, Marty? Yep, picturesque there for sure. And there is our buddy, Cliff Watson. Hey, mate, good to see you there. God bless you for supporting our museum the way you do. Cliff is one of our #1 people. He's waking up with us there. And so, I have to ask him, how is hump day going for you over there? It's Tuesday here.
It's Wednesday in Australia. They're just getting started with Wednesday. Actually, Queensland's a little bit further behind. It's 7 a.m. in Queensland, 8 a.m. in the rest of the East Coast.
Wow. Marty, what have you have there? Say it on the microphone.
Oh, Cliff donated another 400 stars.
Thank you,
And I was
Cliff.
thinking to that yesterday also.
And that's about $4. All right. Each star is a penny. And thank you. You all can donate stars like that. Cliff, thank you for supporting us. There he's doing some outreach, solar observing. I think that was a partial solar eclipse day there. Do you do any stargazing per se, like we do?
Yeah, I do a lot when I'm back in Tasmania. I do go out with a friend of mine, and we do stargazing on the east coast and around the capital city of Hobart, and we get beautiful night skies down there because the atmosphere is so clear.
I'll bet. Yes.
We don't have a lot of problem with light pollution that people in Sydney and Melbourne do. In Sydney, you have to go about 500 kilometres to the west to really get rid of the light pollution. We don't have that problem in Tasmania, and we do some beautiful night skies down there.
Incredible. Well, you're going to see a wonderful photo here. Oh, no, I didn't load that one up, doggone it, of you. On our Facebook page is a picture of Scott under the Magellanic Clouds. I didn't put that one on our slideshow here. The Magellanic Clouds they look like clouds in the sky that are actually galaxies orbiting our Milky Way galaxy. Marty, a comment?
Yeah, Cliff is saying it's cloudy and around 80 degrees. Noosa is packed. What is Noosa?
Okay, Noosa is one of the East Coast communities in Queensland on the northern part of the Sunshine Coast. And Cliff's right, it would be packed because there's people finishing up the last of their summer holidays, and Noosa's one of the main destinations for people in Victoria and Tasmania in particular to head to for summer vacation. So, Cliff, give it another couple of weeks, you'll get your town back.
All right. Yeah, it's like all the hot spots around here, Daytona Beach.
Exactly.
For example, Cocoa Beach. You've got up and down the coast are all the hot spots there. So good. All right. Well, thank you, Cliff, mate, for your contribution and supporting us and turning other people on Australia onto our program. I met Cliff during the Great American Eclipse 5 years ago.
Okay.
He and Dave Renicky were looking for some friends through the museum. I met them, and those are, people in space, Scott, and astronomy. They bond well, don't they?
They do, and borders don't matter because we're dealing with something that's universal. We're dealing with something that's off the planet, and we have this shared interest, this shared passion, and we all just come together with one cause, and that is to really get the word on space education and out to the wider community and get more people as enthused as we are.
Well said, mate. Well, let's go down south under here and set it up by saying that the American space program has had a lot of friends in Australia for one big reason, and that is communications, okay? How you communicate with satellites orbiting the Earth, and the continent of Australia became an important fixture in that. And we're going to look at some photographs that you've taken of a couple sites, Tinbinbilla, in Oriel Valley. So we got some pictures here. Could continue, my friend, telling about the importance of Australia to the American space program.
Well, this really dates back to the beginnings of the program, 1960, 61, when America's getting ready to launch flights on Mercury. We're already doing unmanned flights, getting set for the Ranger lunar impactors and the Mars and Venus probes through Mariner. And one of the first stations we had was actually in the outback at a place called Island Lagoon, which is just to the south of the Woomera rocket range in South Australia. NASA had two stations out there, Island Lagoon for unmanned spaceflight, and also a place called Red Lake, which is now in the Woomera restricted area, so I've never been able to get there. But some of the photos we're going to share with you this afternoon relate to the stations that were developed in the Canberra area, Australia's national capital, of course, about 3 hours from Sydney. And what we're looking at here, this is Deep Space Station DSS 46. This is at the Tinbinbilla station. This is the main antenna out there. This is a 70-meter diameter antenna, and they use this to communicate with the Voyager spacecraft now out of the solar system. This photo in close-up, this shows you the receiving cone And just the sheer diameter of this dish, they can actually rotate this to get it in line for the spacecraft when they rise in the east, and they're able to track the spacecraft all the way through to the west. It's only about 50 kilometres, metric, from Canberra. Yet in this area, we don't get any radio interference or anything that's going to disturb the signal coming in from so far away. We're also receiving information from the Mars landers via this dish as well, in conjunction with Goldstone in California and Madrid in Spain. So it's one of 3 deep space sites currently active around the world, and we've got it in Australia.
Of course, the Earth rotating, one space facility like this cannot keep track, more than a few hours at a time.
Yeah.
For data, a certain window opens up. This is a 70-meter array, or a little over 200 feet, so good size.
And the amazing thing with this, they have about 5 other antennas on site that track various satellites and so on. But this one, you can see it from so far away. The previous photo, I was about 5 kilometres away when I took that photo, coming from the northwest looking, and it just pokes up over the ridge as you drive towards it. It's like some unearthly object that just appears, and it's strange to think this is so close to Canberra.
Yeah, it looks alien a little bit, and then you get to see it like this. Can public go on tours?
Look, they can. At the moment, the Visitors Centre at the Canberra Deep Space Centre is currently closed, unfortunately due to funding. It's a situation we'd like to see corrected so we can get people out to actually see this and understand more of the work we're doing at this incredible site in the Australian Capital Territory.
Well, here's another played a famous role in our Apollo program.
This
honeysuckle.
Yes. Now, this antenna used to be at another site called Honeysuckle Creek, which is about 20 kilometres away from Tidbinbilla. Now, this antenna received the initial pictures of Armstrong walking on the moon on that famous day in July 1969. The antenna itself was located in a remote valley high up in the mountains south of Canberra. It's quite a drive to get into this site. When the station closed in the early 1980s, the whole antenna was deconstructed, taken down to its basic parts, moved over to Tidbinbilla, re-erected and used until the early 2000s. Now it's a National Historical Mechanical Landmark for Australia. So the dish is preserved for all time.
The actual wavelengths from Tranquility Base there hit this receiver and brought us those images. And I'll tell you, that was about 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, July 20th, 1969.
Yeah, it was coming in about lunchtime for Australia. A lot of people in Australia tell me about being school children and actually sitting in classrooms and watching the moon landing as it happened. What a lot of people don't know is that the signal went from the antenna, it went via a hard line into Canberra, was relayed to Sydney, and then out to the United States. So people in Australia actually got to see the television pictures about half a minute before people in America, because the Australian networks took the feed directly from Honeysuckle Creek.
And there's a whole movie about that called The Dish. We're going to talk about it here in just a second. Beautiful panorama there of a valley.
This is Auroral Valley, which is
Auroral, O-R-R-O-R-A-L, Auroral Valley.
Still gets me tongue-tied after 20 years. I often get it wrong. But this is where NASA had their third tracking station in the Canberra area. And this played a role, particularly in Apollo-Soyuz. They tracked that mission. And the flights of the shuttle from STS-1 through to 51A in November of 1984 were partially tracked out of this site and its sister site at Yarragadee in Western Australia. But primarily Earth satellites tracked out of there. With the way the valley's set up, it was easy to have the satellites rise. You're looking east here and then go all the way over. They could track satellites for a good couple of hours from
Oh.
this site.
Absolutely. It's looking good. Well, many of you that follow satellite dishes, there's a movie made about a very successful movie called The Dish, sort of a comedy, but tell us about the premise of The Dish and why we've got sheep on this thing. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I pulled off the internet.
Okay, the reason why we've got sheep is the antenna, the Parkes Radio Telescope in Western New South Wales. It's actually in the middle of a sheep paddock.
The Parkes Radio Telescope, that's the star of this movie.
It is indeed, and the controllers who were based at Parkes at the time, it's interesting when you go into the Parkes antenna itself. You can see the main receiving antenna there, but in the area to the below that is the main control room. It's over about 2 or 3 levels, and the area that was used for Apollo is still in. It's never been reused. It'll be an area about the size of the desk we're sitting at, so it's not a big area, and yet Parkes has continued to play a role in the space program, particularly bringing signals in from Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. We're able to array that with Tib and Billa and just increase our range of receiving.
Wow. So this is monitoring the Voyagers that are about 12 to 15 billion miles away.
Absolutely.
The furthest man-made object ever. The movie was about the drama of a storm that was threatening to move the antenna dish around. And the stars of this movie, a couple of you might notice there, I thought of his, Sam, they got their names up there? No.
Yeah.
The guy on the right, he was in the Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Sam, I think his name's Sam. The film's based on actual events, uses fictional characters, and alters historical details a little bit. But it's basically about the Parkes signal was used for 8.5 minutes after the beginning of the moonwalk. Armstrong's first steps on the moon and his words were transmitted to Earth by a signal from Honeysuckle Creek. And that's one small step for a man. Well, they try to say that there was a power outage when he said a.
That's right.
In the movie, but that didn't occur, supposedly. They did have very high gust winds, 68 miles an hour. The 60 degrees inclination risked damaging the disc, even injury to the people working there who were trying to keep the antenna pointed at the moon during the moonwalk. So there was some real drama there.
Absolutely.
Add to it what you know.
Now, the distance between Parkes and Honeysuckle Creek is such that the moon will rise at Honeysuckle first, and the moon will then rise at Parkes about 2 or 3 minutes later. So for the first couple of minutes, the signal that was coming through was clearer at Honeysuckle Creek, and then Houston Video starts seeing the signal from Parkes, and it's even better. So they switch video. You hear it in the mission control commentary from Honeysuckle over to Parkes, but Honeysuckle was still receiving the signal. That's what went out in Australia. And there was a video tech on duty in the station called Ed Von Renward, and he'd taken his Super 8 movie camera with him.
Ed Von Renward. Okay.
And against regulations, he took his video Super 8 movie camera in, and he actually held it up to the monitor recorded some of the footage. And this is footage that was never broadcast, particularly of Armstrong and Aldrin jettisoning the backpacks after the walk had concluded. You see them tumbling down the ladder of the lunar module. And the only footage of that is Super 8 footage that Ed Von Renward shot that day in 1969.
Huh. Ed Von Renoir. I wonder how many of you space geeks know that. Is that posted on YouTube somewhere?
It is on a site called honeysucklecreek.net. They will have information on that. And if you approach that website, they do have DVDs of this, or they did have, this footage, and also footage of Alan Shepard and Eberhard Rees visiting Honeysuckle around about the time of Apollo 14.
Very interesting. Cool. And you heard it here on Stay Curious. So we'll see people be downloading that movie tonight. Actually, a very fun movie for anybody that's not even a space geek. There's a little
Absolutely.
romance involved in there. It grossed $18 million actually, $18 million at the box office in Australia. Top grossing film in Australia in the year 2000. Critics gave it a 7.5 out of 10, calling it a feel-good movie without an abundance of mush.
I like that description. That's awesome.
What's mush to you?
Oh, definitely not the dish.
That's right.
That was, but the same production company had made a film called The Castle that came out about a year to 18 months before. So a lot of people were waiting for the dish, having seen The Castle and the success it was. So it had a head start when it came out in Australia because of this other movie. But brilliant movie, and did a lot to raise the space image in Australia.
One of you chimed in, and Marty tells me that Sam O'Neill, the handsome actor on the right there, that is the main engineer there, I guess you'd call him.
Yeah, he was the main person responsible for the park's antenna. And I believe the gentleman on the left, I have no idea who he is as an actor. I believe he was played the part of the NASA representative or something like that.
Okay, well, very cool. Marty?
But Mark, that Sam O'Neill came from Doug Forrest and Carlton Bailey.
So which one first?
Well,
Doug, he's in
Let's
L.A.
get Sam Neill, and then Carlton said O'Neill.
Okay,
So it's
okay,
fair.
all right. Well, we've got a couple. Say hello there to our friends that watch Stay Curious that are now your friends.
Yeah, well, we've got a number of people watching today. We've got Doug Forrest. G'day, Doug. Good to have you on board. We've got Bill Whitting, Cynthia Rossi, Carlton Bailey. I've been aware of Carlton's work for a long time. Good to have you on board, Carlton.
He's a
Steve
pretty
Hammer.
decent photographer, isn't he?
Oh, some of the stuff Carlton does is just phenomenal. So, Carlton, thank you for all the work and the pleasure you give me with your photography. Cliff Watson in Pomona. G'day, Cliff. We've already talked about you. Good to have you on board.
Right there where my head is, about right where Pomona is, right? in
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
right?
roughly in that area. Now, excuse me if I get this wrong. Gary Gerald. Gary Jarrell.
He's a farmer in Georgia.
Oh, great, excellent. Hopefully, I've been enjoying some of your produce while I've been in the country.
Peanuts. He's a peanut farmer.
I've been eating a lot of peanuts. So
Okay.
thank you, Gary, for the peanuts. Shirlene Walker, Christopher Mick. Christopher, I've seen you mentioned on Stay Curious before. So
He's in Hudson, Wisconsin. He's an outreach coordinator and
wow,
and a solar system ambassador.
traveled through Wisconsin to Wisconsin Dells to the a museum there that had a Mir module. Who else have we got? Mark Usiak and Tom the Usiak brothers. Thank you for joining us. And
You've seen their photography
yes,
all the time on here.
yes, I think I'm friends
And a
with
couple
Mark on
shows.
Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, g'day, Mark and Daniel DeJong. Thank you for joining Stay Curious today.
Don't know if Daniel's in the Netherlands or not. He could be. That's his native homeland. And
Right.
his wife is from the Ukraine. Safe travels to you, Daniel. He's been in our Stay Curious studios. I think all of them, most of them, all of them been in our Stay Curious studios at one time or another. And now you're here. Well, thank you. We're going to talk a little more space here with, you were looking around and I asked you what was your favorite object in our museum. And you quickly said that the hatch from MA1.
Yeah, look,
We'll see it in a minute here.
Mercury Atlas 1 launched, if you can call it that, in July 1960, blew up shortly after launch. And here we have Mercury Atlas 1 going off the pad out here at what I term the Old Cape, the Cape Canaveral pads
36.
36.
And this is where we have our Cape Canaveral gallery that you've seen recreated of the Atlas rocket. Put over 350 satellites in orbit. About 350 of these carcasses are laid in the Atlantic Ocean out there.
Yeah.
And doesn't have the Titan rocket on it. It has the Mercury, one-man Mercury, that we were going to orbit John Glenn on it.
That's right. And you notice something about this. This is the very first test launch of the Mercury Atlas 1 minus an escape tower
Yes.
up top.
No escape tower.
So
It blew up about 70 seconds. Tell us the story there.
from what I understand, the rocket lifted off all right, and then you might be able to chime in with a bit more, but we had an issue that caused the rocket to blow up, and the the Mercury spacecraft ended up down in the ocean. It was recovered and now rests at the Kansas Cosmosphere. I have heard a story that the spacecraft ended up in a barn of all places for a while until it was recovered by the Cosmosphere, and they've left it pretty much as it was. It's displayed horizontally rather than vertically.
Right.
And
It's a mess in the glass case in there.
Yeah,
President Kennedy room, I call it.
You
at
can
the
see
Cosmosphere.
you can see the window, the pilot observation window, very similar to Alan Shepard's Freedom 7 craft. That for me, and some of the titanium plates are the only recognisable parts of it. Then I come to the museum here in downtown Titusville, and what do we see? We see the hatch. So between the American Space Museum and the Cosmosphere, I'm going to end up with the full spacecraft, which is totally cool.
Well, we've teased them that we have this. That's your photograph of it I asked you to take. What happened is still under some debate that the Atlas people were blamed for the rocket. Nothing happened with the engine. There was the Atlas people blamed the McDonnell for the fatigue on the ring that the capsule was sitting on. Was partial metal and other exotic, of course, materials, titanium and so forth. The capsule reached about 6 miles in high and about 5 miles downrange. In 3 minutes, it blew up. And they know that at a certain point, the Atlas pitched over, and the big pressure on the amount at maximum dynamic pressure when it tipped over for directional purposes, that gave a lot of extra weight. You can kind of see it on one side was crushed in to, and that blew up the oxygen tank.
Yeah, if you look to the just above the observation window there, you can see where the spacecraft, it's almost being bent.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not as obvious now with the way the Cosmosphere's got it lying down, but just to see the condition of the spacecraft and
You
actually,
got your metal shingles there.
yeah,
So there it is, hanging in our room just to the left of me there, and it was found by a former space worker who was a sculpture person looking to make yard art, and so we're glad Pamela Shivik has joined us, and we've got Katerina Skarzaza from your Aussie fan club.
probably the head of it. That's my wife.
Oh, that's your wife? Okay, all right.
I'm pleased she's
good.
watching.
Yeah.
I'm pleased she's watching. She hasn't forgotten about me.
Well, there's your handsome husband there. All right. And where are you at? Where are you located there?
Okay, this is the flight director console at Old Mission Control, Apollo Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston. This was taken about 6 or 7 years ago. And now that facility is being totally redone. It's been, all the consoles have been brought back to almost operational condition. And that was done in time for the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 back in 2019. So great to have that conserved for all time.
Absolutely. Good picture there. And hello to Katerina?
Katerina.
Katerina. How long you all been married?
We've been married since 2016. And
All right.
I immediately left the country to come over here for the Apollo 1 anniversary about 8 weeks after we got married. So she let me go for 3 months.
That's a good woman, and let you follow your passion.
Absolutely.
Scott, it's been a pleasure, our conversation with you and getting to know you. One, what's on your bucket list? And Pam Shivik, hello to you, Pam.
If I had one thing on my bucket list, I've managed to locate and photograph every manned American spacecraft. I'll get Gemini 10 in about another week.
Where's that located?
That's at the Cosmosphere.
Okay, right.
Actually, my favourite flight. I've
Apollo
left it.
13's there also.
Apollo 13 and Liberty Bell 7.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've got 3 really great spacecraft, plus the Russian stuff, which we talked about earlier. But my bucket list now is Mitchell, Indiana. Gemini 3 is up there in Mitchell. So hopefully on my next trip, I'm going to get Gemini 3 and complete my set of American manned spacecraft.
And Mitchell, Indiana is the hometown
Of Gus Grissom. He of Liberty Bell 7, Gemini 3, obviously. That's why the spacecraft's there. And sadly was lost on Apollo 1.
Absolutely. We're going to honor his life this Sunday at Spaceview Park at 1 o'clock
Right.
with a wonderful ceremony that we'll be talking more about. Tomorrow, we're going to honor the Apollo 1 astronauts. Thursday, we'll honor the Challenger astronauts. And Friday, the Columbia astronauts, by giving you a nice biography of their lives and how they contributed to space. And we'll do all that without any images of the disasters. You can find those anywhere. We want to take we want to celebrate these people's lives and let you know little glimpses into them and share some of the knowledge that I've heard from Marty and some of the 5 years in this space museum. You hear a lot of stories, about some of the astronauts, and 90% of them are great. And I want to share a few of those I've heard.
Yeah, and look, it's important to get those stories out there. As you rightly said, Mark, the footage of these accidents has been replayed multiple times on networks all over the world. We don't need to see that again. Let's bring these people to the forefront and celebrate the great lives and all their achievements.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Scott. And finally, I just got to ask you, what all these museums you go to, where does our little humble American Space Museum fit in the scheme of things of your historical analysis there?
Mark, you're right up there, and I urge everybody, whether you're in Europe, if you're coming over from Australia, stop by this museum in downtown Titusville, because there's artifacts and material here that you won't see anywhere else. It's all being donated by people who actually worked at the Space Center. There's a lot of volunteers here who actually have
Marty,
who have history with the program. Those reminiscences are just really fantastic, and seeing these unique artifacts like the Mercury Atlas 1 hatch, like some of the shuttle hardware that's here, like the recreated control room. We really, I can't encourage people enough to stop by this museum and really get a sense of the early history of the program.
Yes, and you're close to it. Paul Sylvia's watching. Ryan Kelly. Our exhibits are very accessible. That's what always got me my first visit 5 years ago. I talked to our now director, Karan Conklin, and I said I was writing a column about it, and I said, I want to call it the best man cave I've ever been in, or space cave, because everything's so cozy and still is.
Yeah, look, as you're right, it's very, very accessible, and there's materials I see here that I don't see any other museum. For example, some of the hazard suits, the hazmat suits over in the other gallery here, I've not seen them anywhere else.
The hatch to MA1.
The hatch to MA1. And another unique item, it's a thruster that's come from Gemini 8. And people know the story behind Gemini 8 and the problems it had on orbit. It really is just a fantastic thing to see, and just get the context of exactly what happened with this and other flights. And it's all right here in downtown Titusville. Please come down.
Thank you very much, and we wish you a safe trip around our country here, and I know I'll stay in touch with you now in different ways since we've connected this way and exchanged numbers and so forth. Really mean it. Great to have you on here, my friend.
Great to have you, Mark.
Marty, we've got anything to clean up on our Streamlabs program today?
Well, a little bit. Cliff Watson said he'll be here next year.
Yay, all right, Cliff.
We got a lot of good comments. Cynthia Rossi just a terrific show today. So a lot of good comments.
Good. Well, we appreciate everybody's comments, and tell other people to like, share, and watch us on YouTube. And, of course, Facebook is where we got started. And so we're looking forward to increasing our awareness, and is so thrilled that somebody that's 7,000 miles away from us is right here beside us here to help you all stay curious. So until tomorrow, when we celebrate the Apollo 1 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, I'm Mark Marquette saying we can't wait to see you in our museum like Scott here to bridge the space between us.